Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Save a trip to the doctor and let their pharmacists test and prescribe your medicines. From strep throat to birth control to UTIs and migraines. Stop into the store or schedule online at safeway.com/pharmacy.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
If you're superstitious, you'll be glad to know there's only one Friday the 13th to worry about this year, but it is today. Then there's another type of teenth coming up that we can all celebrate. Juneteenth celebrations in Denver and other Colorado cities will be held this weekend. I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, why the U.S. Justice Department just asked for all of Colorado's voter election data.
No election official I have talked to in Colorado or otherwise has ever heard of a request like this.
Then, if you get health insurance through Connect for Health Colorado, you need to know what Congress may do to it.
People who buy insurance through Colorado's marketplace could lose coverage. Premiums for the rest could double.
Plus, an update on the possibility of a strike at Safeway stores. And Netflix debuts a documentary this weekend about an unforgettable moment in local history.
It's hard to believe, but it is absolutely true.
It's Friday, June 13th. Here's the news in Colorado today. In a sweeping request, the Department of Justice has asked Colorado's Secretary of State to turn over all records relating to the 2024 federal elections. It also asked her to preserve any records left over from the 2020 election. NPR's Miles Parks broke this story, and he joins us now from Washington, D.C. Miles, this sounds like a broad request from the Justice Department. What do they mean by all records?
So it's a little bit unclear at this point. I mean, there's speculation that this could mean all ballots, all voter registration documents. The Secretary of State's office themselves doesn't actually keep a lot of those nitty-gritty election records. Those are kept at the counties. But I think the bigger point here is just this idea of wanting everything has just never really been seen from the Department of Justice before.
Do we know why the Department of Justice wants these records?
It's not entirely clear at this point, but a lot of election officials in Colorado seem to think it's in some way related to Tina Peters. I know your listeners may remember her, but she's a former Mesa County clerk who is serving a 9-year prison sentence for giving access after the 2020 election, unauthorized access to somebody to try to copy election data. And she's become kind of a folk hero for the people who think the 2020 election was stolen. And in her trial, a big part of her defense was accusing the Secretary of State's office of ordering her to illegally delete records. That claim has never been found to be legitimate, but that connection seems to be relevant here as election officials are looking at this request.
It has been almost a year now since Tina Peters was convicted. Does anything in the Department of Justice request actually mention her?
It doesn't, but it is worth noting that just a week before this letter from the Department of Justice went out, President Donald Trump posted on social media that he felt that Peters was a, quote, political prisoner. And he also directed the Justice Department to, quote, take all necessary action to try to free her. So that post and that directive to the Justice Department and then this letter going out just a few days later, I think that proximity has a lot of election officials feeling like these two things are linked.
Is there possibly something in that election data that they're going after that could then exonerate her?
Almost certainly not. But I think the overlap in this idea of trying to do oversight of the Secretary of State's record-keeping processes, I think there's just some thought that there is some kind of bigger goal here, even if it's not clear at this point what it is.
In your reporting, Miles, you note that it's not just the Justice Department that's interested in Colorado's voter records. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so on March 25th, which was the same day that President Trump put out an executive order about voting, the Republican National Committee sent a letter to Colorado as well as 48 other states. It was a more targeted request than the one that DOJ sent out, but it was a request for a bunch of different types of voter registration records. And the interesting thing here and how these two things are related or seemingly somewhat related is that people in Donald Trump's orbit, people on the conservative right who are really interested in election integrity efforts, they're acquiring a lot of data and trying to acquire a lot of elections data right now. And no one's really sure what they want to do with all of this data as they collect it. But I think the fear is, with Donald Trump's history of contesting election results, that this will be in some ways used as the basis for legal action or something else in future elections.
Going back to the Department of Justice request, is Colorado complying with it? And if they do comply, what is the state handing over? Would that include my voter information or the information of any person who's listening to this podcast?
It could, but I think it's just worth noting that everything that Colorado has turned over at this point is all publicly available data. That includes a list of people who voted in 2024, but that list does not include things like Social Security numbers or anything like that. It also doesn't include data on who anyone voted for, just the people who voted. But it's worth noting that that is a far cry from the kind of, quote, all election records that the Department of Justice requested. And so it's still a little bit unclear whether the Justice Department is going to be satisfied with what Colorado turned over or whether this is going to turn into some sort of legal saga moving forward.
NPR's Miles Parks, thanks for your reporting.
Thank you.
If you get health insurance through the Obamacare marketplace, officially called Connect for Health Colorado, your coverage could disappear or get a lot more expensive. More than 100,000 Coloradans could be affected. CPR health reporter John Daly is here. John, we're talking about the reconciliation bill that's being debated in Congress. It includes changes to state insurance marketplaces. How could that play out here?
Right. So the marketplaces were set up more than a decade ago with the launch of the Affordable Care Act, also called the ACA or Obamacare. We all remember that. People in the state are able to buy insurance, often with financial help, in the form of tax credits from the federal government. The bill in its current form would mean people who buy insurance through Colorado's marketplace could lose coverage. And as you alluded to, premiums for the rest could double. Kevin Patterson is CEO with the marketplace, Connect for Health Colorado. I asked him how many people he expects will leave the market altogether and decide to go without insurance.
We think that it could be impacting about 112,000 of our current customers, which is about 43% of our customers, and cost the state about $620 million in tax credits. It is a very big number.
Indeed it is. Which customers is Patterson talking about?
Well, we're talking about all kinds of people. It may be people who are self-employed, small business owners, farmers, people whose companies don't provide insurance, people who work intermittently. Patterson says these changes could also create a financial strain on providers like hospitals and clinics and community health centers, since more patients who come to them will now be uninsured. And we know these health providers are already stretched thin and, of course, could also be dealing with the impact of Medicaid cuts.
John, the whole idea of Obamacare was, of course, to get more people on health insurance. And Colorado's uninsured rate has dropped considerably since it launched. What impact could cuts have on that?
Could definitely have an impact. If these changes, like the tax credits expiring that we've been talking about, go through, the state's uninsured rate will rise. It could go up by 2 to 3%. That's according to estimates by the Congressional Budget Office.
There is pushback from Democrats. They want Congress to revise the reconciliation bill. What about Republicans? What are their reasons for these changes?
You know, Republicans see cuts to Medicaid and the health exchanges as needed changes because these health programs have been so expensive. And they and some conservative think tanks think the ACA, Obamacare, needs reworking to limit fraud as well. Republican Representative Gabe Evans, who represents Colorado's 8th District, has defended health provisions in the bill. He told me in April he wants to cut waste and fraud while protecting Colorado patients and providers.
Besides making health insurance more expensive, the Republican proposal would further restrict the ACA marketplaces in some other ways. How so?
The bill also includes new verification requirements and new restrictions against immigrants, and it may shorten the enrollment period and end automatic enrollment. All of this will play a role in making the marketplaces harder for customers to navigate and for the programs themselves to administer. And we should remind folks that during the first Trump administration, there was an effort to repeal Obamacare. John McCain famously had the thumbs down. The repeal effort failed. And some people see this as a return to trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, but kind of by 1,000 cuts.
John Daly, thank you.
You bet.
An update now on the possibility of more worker strikes at your local grocery store. As soon as this weekend, we asked CPR business reporter Sarah Mulholland to bring us up to speed with the latest.
Safeway workers in Colorado could go on strike as early as Sunday. That's the update. They originally voted earlier this month to authorize a strike, and that includes employees in stores along the Front Range, as well as in Pueblo, Estes Park, Fountain, Salida, Steamboat Springs, and a few other places. Safeway is owned by Albertsons. Workers say the company is not negotiating fairly, and the union wants the grocer to address, quote, chronic understaffing. Now they've given Safeway 72 hours notice, which is required before they could go on strike. That 72 hours runs out at 11:59 p.m. tomorrow. And to be clear, the union has not made any official announcement that a strike will happen. But if a compromise can't be reached, we could see a strike take effect as early as Sunday morning. So shoppers would have the option to cross the picket line or find somewhere else to get groceries and medications if you use the pharmacy. A quick reminder that all this is happening as King Soopers workers in Colorado are engaged in contract negotiations with their employer. There's been no update on that yet this week.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome.
A disclosure here, this podcast is sponsored in part by Safeway, but the company has no editorial influence on our reporting. Starting this weekend, you can relive the drama of a bizarre emergency in Colorado that captivated the nation. Netflix will launch a documentary about Balloon Boy.
Rather an incredible breaking news story that we're following right now, and this is coming to us out of Colorado.
It was breaking news on every major network in 2009. Live coverage of a silver flying saucer-shaped weather balloon blowing through the skies.
Now traveling at pretty wicked speeds right there.
Thought to have a 6-year-old little boy trapped inside.
Imagine the terror right now of this 6-year-old little boy.
Helicopters chased the balloon as it drifted from the boy's home in Fort Collins, where his father, Richard Heaney, told the media and police that his son, Falcon, accidentally dislodged the balloon after climbing inside. 90 minutes later, the balloon finally landed in a field near DIA.
It has just landed, Jeff.
Oh, wow.
This is phenomenal. Phenomenal news. We've been watching this play out.
I'm watching it. I see it.
Unbelievable.
The nation watched as officers secured it to the ground and checked inside the balloon.
I guess the big question is the kid in there?
Right, exactly.
Nope, no boy inside that balloon. The Heaney family said, oops, little Falky was actually just hiding the whole time in the attic of the family home.
But we're so happy that nothing tragic happened.
The Heaneys started a national TV tour that same night, and that's where their story began to unravel. On CNN, the boy was asked why he didn't come out of hiding when called.
We did this for the show.
Huh? A show? On ABC News the next morning, as the family sat for more interviews, little Falky looked sick and tired of the lying.
No, Mom, I feel like I'm going to vomit.
And he did vomit on live TV.
Yeah, I think he's queasy.
The wild hoax came to be known as Balloon Boy. The Heaney parents spent a few months in jail. The news cycle moved on, and the family did too, to Florida. 16 years later, the balloon boy is now a young man.
But before you make your decision, let's take a look inside.
On Instagram, Falcon Heaney advertises his business. He builds homes for a living, the tiny kind, the ones where there's no room for a kid to hide.
Hit us up. I know you want a tiny house. Let's make it happen.
Thanks for listening to Colorado Today. If you heard something you liked, share it with a friend. And be sure to follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Shop online and get $30 off your first online order when you use code SAVE30 at checkout. Get the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Get started at Safeway.com or the Safeway app.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.